I'm Mark Valenti, and welcome to another edition of the Refined Savage YouTube videos here. We are going to start a new series this week on Highland Games throwing events. There's not a lot of information out there on the Highland Games events and how to do the techniques properly. So we're going to start a series. We're going to go through all the events, starting today with the Braemar stone, or standing throw as it's sometimes called. The standing throw is the absolute center of the throwing world. When it comes to the shot put, the discus, or the spinning weight throws in the Highland Games, the foot positions and the techniques for the lower body especially are all interrelated, and if you learn a good standing throw, it'll help you in all those different events. The only thing I was ever coached in as an athlete coming up is I had a coach teach me a proper standing throw, and that carried over to all the other events, made all the other events a lot easier to learn once I learned the basics of that standing throw. That being said, the Braemar stone is different than the standing throw drill. And we're going to kind of go over the differences and the similarities between the two, but I encourage you to treat these two things differently, especially if you're a spinner in the open stone, or either a South African spinner or a full spinner. Your technique for the standing throw will be a little bit different than your technique for the Braemar stone, and we will go over exactly how that changes. Okay, so now we're going to talk about stone placement, how to hold it in your hands and how to get it on your chin or neck for the throw. So Zach's going to take the stone. What he's going to want to do is have the stone seated on his hand so that his fingers are behind it and the thumb is underneath it as a support. So if you notice, stone, a little bit different than shot, is a lot larger, so he's got a lot more into the meat of his hand than you would with a shot put, but the majority of the weight is going to be up in his fingertips. Once he gets that in the position he likes, he's going to put the stone on his neck in a position that's comfortable for him. So he holds it a little bit further back. He's a spinner, and you see that a lot with spinners. You can have it anywhere from the ear all the way under the chin. One of the things I see that's a problem with some people is trying to raise the palm up too high. You saw that in some old track and field throwing videos. I've never actually seen that work effectively. If it works for you, great, but I suggest that the palm be facing towards your chin as you throw, pushing the ball into your neck. The elbow is going to be pushed up high. Another problem we see is when people go to release the ball, they've got a nice hip lift and the elbow will drop, causing the ball to go straight up in the air. So you want that elbow nice and high so that when you come through, it's kind of in line with your shoulder, okay? So you notice his elbow's up nice and high, pinching that stone up into his neck. All right, so next up we're going to talk about foot placement in the stone. One of the most crucial things is where you put your foot in relation to the board and how your feet line up with each other. So depending on what he's going to do later in the throw, whether he's going to reverse or non-reverse, is going to kind of determine how far you are away from the board. If I'm going to reverse my standing throw, I want a little bit of space, a little bit of leeway at the front of the board so I can actually replace my feet and not screw that up. But if he's going to non-reverse, he's going to put the foot as close to that board as possible to get the most out of his throw. When he lines up, his right foot is going to be forward, a little bit wider than his shoulders, and his left toe is going to be in line with his right heel or instep. So Zach will set up. Now, the way he has that, if you notice his left toe is in line with his right instep, that's going to allow him to turn his hips effectively, okay? If you get into a position where the left foot is advanced to the right, you can't get your hips through to finish the throw, okay? So you want to have that nice stagger, left foot in line with the right heel, the left toe in line with the right heel or instep, so that when you lift and turn with the feet, the hip can turn all the way through the throw. Okay, so let's talk about the differences between the Braemar stone put and a traditional standing throw. If you're a spinner, Zach was a spinner in college, his standing throw is going to look a little bit different than what I want. So his normal standing throw position, starting position, if you look at it, is nice and high. Feet are in the same position, but it's a nice high position with his arms stretched out. And that's great if he's drilling his spinning shot put throw, because that's the position he's hoping to land in. But in the Braemar stone, we're trying to get the maximum distance out of our standing throw. So what I like to see is a more traditional glide style standing put. So he's looking at a much deeper knee bend. His body is arched over, that free arm hanging low. The reason for that is we're going to get much more leg drive, much more extension from the back, and a giant push with the hips, and on a longer pathway to push on the ball to get it out into the sectors. So the difference being with the traditional shot put, spinning style standing throw is you are trying to mimic the power position you're going to land in as a spinner. This is the Braemar stone, so we're trying to get the maximum distance out of our throw, so it's different than your drill. So as a Braemar stone thrower, I suggest trying to get into that more traditional glide style position to throw. Next up, we're going to talk about focal points and what to do with your free arm, okay? So Zach finds that traditional glide style shot put Braemar position. Now, his eyes are going to be fixed on a point about 6 feet in front of his right foot, okay? So you're looking at a spot on the ground, and you're going to stare at that as long as possible. The free arm is going to be dangling and loose. You notice he's moving his fingers around to kind of get into his brain that this arm needs to be loose and fluid, okay? So eyes 6 feet away from the front foot, focused on the target, long left arm. I used to take a towel into the ring and throw that towel on the ground right in front of my foot, so I knew I had someplace to look at that whole time. It'll keep you back and focused so that when his hips come through, the ball and his head stay back on that target, on that focal point as long as possible. One of the most important things you have to learn as a thrower is how to properly turn your feet. A lot of times when people hit a power position, or if they start in that Braemar position, they don't turn their feet at all. They just lift up and over the left with no hip drive at all. So what we're going to learn is how to properly turn that front foot, that right foot, in order to get your hips moving in the right direction of the throw. It's the difference between me standing there and pushing someone this way, or me being able to turn my body and push them this way. I'm going to get a lot more force and leg drive if I can turn my hips towards the direction I want to push. So Zach's going to get into position, and you notice we have that good setup again, left toe in line with right instep, and all he's going to do is turn his foot in the direction of the throw. That's the basic starting movement of the throw. The ball will be back, your eyes are on the focal point, the left arm's long, and he's just going to turn that foot. So he can just practice turning that foot back and forth, getting in and out of that position. Good. The other thing we can do is a nice drill that's going to help you learn to turn that foot properly. So we're going to get the left leg out of the equation and just have his right foot do most of the work. So this is a great drill to do with young throwers to learn how that right foot works. I see this a lot with new throwers who just haven't caught that on a video of what exactly that right foot is doing. This is your engine. It's imperative that that right foot turns towards the throw. It leads the whole system. This is in your Braemar stone, it's in your open stone, it's in your weight throws. That right foot has to keep turning, okay? It's the reason why you see people wearing throwing shoes when they throw, and they have that nice, soft, slippery surface on the bottom, so that right foot can turn effectively. Okay, so let's talk about hip drive. So you've gotten into your position, you've found your focal point, your arm's nice and long, you turn that right foot hard, now you're going to explode with your hips up and into the ball. And you want to think of that right hip as what's sending that ball, okay? It's not an arm push, it's not even really a leg drive as much as it is an explosion with your hips up and into the ball. So no matter how low he gets with that right leg, I've seen people go really low, I've seen people up nice and high, but the most important part is how explosively can he push those hips up and in the direction of the throw. That's going to send the ball. Okay, you've lifted with your hips, you've turned your foot, it's time to release the ball. So now, Zach's feet are going to be turned towards the direction he's going to throw. The ball is held nice and high on his neck, the way we talked about earlier. The left arm is through it, basically pointing where he wants that ball to go. Now, as he comes through, he's in this nice high incline bench press position. He's going to try to release that ball. You know, they say 42 degrees. I say get your eyes up and release the ball in the direction of your eye line. So he comes up and through. The left arm pulls back and down as if he's throwing an elbow behind him. That's going to accelerate his right side. He'll get a nice big stretch and then an acceleration through at the end. Now, when we talk about releasing the ball, one of the things I want to see is you see the ball leave your fingers, but I don't necessarily want to see you see the ball hit the ground. The reason for that is a lot of people will say, wow, that was a great throw, and then walk right out the front of the toe board. So see the ball leave your fingers, look away, get yourself under control, turn around. If you threw it far enough, you're going to get to see the ball land anyways. Okay? Now, let's talk about reversing. Reverse, in my opinion, is totally up to the athlete. I usually let it happen naturally. So the majority of the time when I'm coaching an athlete, or even when I was throwing myself, I would have them hit non-reverse throws over and over and over again. So a non-reverse throw is just sticking the position and hitting that block. So the block is that left side completely shutting down as the right side moves around it. So your left side will block, stiff, down, and the right side moves around it. If you do this hard enough, there is a tendency for you to reverse. So as he comes through, he's going to block hard, and then his feet will turn, okay? That is a natural thing to happen. It shouldn't be a jump into the throw, okay? You don't want to think about jumping. The longer your feet are on the ground, the more pressure you're putting on the ball. The minute one of your feet leaves the ground, you're done putting any pressure on the ball. So if you do reverse, it should be a natural, organic thing that happens from a solid block. All right, thanks for listening to this video. What we are going to do is now a series of these. So the next up will be open stone, and we're going to slowly progress through all the events. Hopefully it'll give you guys a nice intro into the season, give you some training tips to make you throw further, which is always a good thing. So right now up on the site, therefinedsavage.com, we are doing a discount code, Iceland, all in caps. That's to celebrate Magnus for Magnuson week now. So it was Magnus for Magnuson Day because we had him on the podcast on Wednesday. It's going to be in effect until April 19th. So you can go on there, order shirts, and now we have sticker packs up there as well. You can order those at a discount and get those in. So get those orders in. We love seeing them. And once you get your stuff, go ahead and tag yourself wearing the gear. We love to see that stuff, and we'll share it on the Instagram page. Up next on the podcast is Jason Jarrell. Jason Jarrell is an absolute animal. He is the author of Ages of Giants, and he is an expert in Adena and Hopewell Indian burial mound cultures in Ohio. That sounds maybe a little boring to you, but wait to hear what he found inside these ancient Indian burial mounds. It's going to really shock you. It's a super interesting interview, and I traveled down to Charleston, West Virginia to interview him and his wife, Sarah, and it was a fantastic interview. Make sure you check it out. It'll be up on the site Wednesday at 7 a.m. on therefinedsavage.com, iTunes, Stitcher, Beyond Pod, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, anywhere else you get your podcasts. This has been The Refined Savage. See ya.